Welcome to another Airbrush Asylum video. In this video, I'm going to show you how to fix this issue with your airbrush. So if your trigger is sticking down like this, well then that's what this video is going to help you with. I'm going to show you how to fix that coming up. Okay, so when your trigger is sticking, so this is a Iwata Micron, but it doesn't matter what airbrush you've got, it does commonly happen to airbrushes. We need to take off the quick release if that's something that you are using. And what I want to do is I want to get into this area here where the plunger assembly sits. So I'm going to utilize this tool. See, with those two prongs, I can get into this area here. So I line those prongs up with those two bits in there. You'll feel it click in, and then just carefully wind the plunger assembly, the screw that holds it all together, out. Now when you do that, be careful because you can see the spring is wanting to bounce out. So you can see this little tool also holds that locking nut into place, which is handy. Now we want to remove the spring. So if you actually tip it upside down like this, the whole plunger assembly will fall out. So now that we've removed those parts, the spring and the plunger assembly, also want to remove the trigger. So to do that, you want to unscrew the handle, loosen the locking nut, pull the needle out, and then this is enough for us to just pull that trigger out. So then you can just pull back on the rocker assembly. We want to pull that trigger out like so. So you can see the Micron trigger is different to a lot of airbrushes. A lot of the time you'll have this piece here, which is like that little dangly bit there that presses down on your plunger assembly. Now this trigger here that I'm showing you is from the Eclipse, so you can certainly see the difference between the two triggers there. So the other part of the rocker assembly will now pop out. Okay, so that's also usually attached on other airbrushes, but with the Micron it's a bit different. And then with the Micron, that little dangly bit is actually sitting in there as a separate piece. So I've got to pop that piece out, because I've got to make sure that that has been cleaned as well. So you can just use the back of your needle and just pop that through. So push the back of the needle down the hole, and then if you press down, it'll come out. There you have it. So basically this piece needs to be cleaned, as well as this part here, which was part of that plunger assembly where the spring goes on. So those are the two pieces that need to be cleaned. Then we put it all back together, and that should fix the stickiness from your trigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a cotton bud or Q-tip, and I'm going to put some Trident reducer on that and clean those parts. Just squirt a bit on there, and then go ahead and just give that a nice clean. So if there's any traces of dirt, then that can definitely make that trigger stick down. Believe it or not, I've also seen dried up paint in these areas, especially in our student brushes. Don't know how paint travels down there, but it's happened. So you want to give that a good clean. Now this reducer will pretty much remove most of that. If you need to use something more aggressive, then by all means use like an automotive thinner or gun wash. That will work. Obviously be careful with that. I'm just cleaning all this up as well. So I know a lot of people wouldn't like using cotton buds because they're worried about the fibers. Personally, I haven't had any issues. Make sure that you give them a good clean, and that they're free of any of those fibers that could cause sticking. I've had no issues myself in the 20 plus years I've always used cotton buds, and it's been fine. Okay, so now I want to go ahead and reassemble the plunger assembly. I'm going to put the spring back on here. So this part goes towards the top, right? So that goes in first when you're reassembling your airbrush. And that little screw lines back up with this and screws back in. Now if you don't have one of these tools, you can also use tweezers. They do work. So now we need to put that little piece back in there. So if you have the other trigger style, this one here, that would then just drop into that hole. But because the Micron trigger is different, we've got to put that in first. So just drop that in. So you can use the back of your needle to sort of put it into place. A pair of tweezers also works really well, and that's been put back into place. You can just see that there. So that's been pressed down, that's the right way. So now we can put the trigger back in. So with the trigger, we need to identify which way is the back, and you can do that by that notch which goes towards the back of your airbrush. Place it in on an angle for this particular trigger and then twist it, and then you should have action. So when you feel that bounciness, that's correct. Okay, so now we need to put this little piece back in. This is part of that rocker assembly. Again, on the Micron, it is separated and it goes up against the trigger like so. So I just tilt the airbrush forward a little bit and you should be right there. That's back into place. You can see that's kicking back now. Now we put the needle back in. Push it all the way to the end until it seats. Don't like force it really rough. You know, you just want to push it in, feel that you've got the end of that nozzle, and then press it a little bit, and then make sure you tighten up this screw. If you don't, then you'll fill up your airbrush with paint, you'll pull back and nothing will happen. You can see there how that moves that rocker assembly back and forth, and that back and forth motion allows paint to escape from the front of the air nozzle, whereas if you have that loose and you've forgotten to tighten it, you'll notice that the needle isn't moving, it's just that rocker assembly. Therefore, the needle stays in one place, not allowing the paint to come out. Okay, so it's a little bit of a quick tip. If you have cleaned your airbrush and you've put paint in and you're wondering why it's not coming out, that's more often than not the reason. Now, put the handle back on, and we'll fit the quick connect back on. Hook up our airline and make sure that when we press down, it's not sticking on. So there we have it, a very easy and quick method showing you how to fix that sticky trigger. I do hope that you found this video helpful. Be sure to check out some of the other videos and playlists that I've got listed here. And until next time, go grab your airbrush, do some amazing artwork yourself, and I'll see you again very, very soon in the next video.